Welcome to the Hemp CBD Plant Morphology and Composition section. As discussed in the Cannabis Plant, a Clinical Perspective module, there are two main subspecies of the cannabis sativa genus, sativa and indica, followed by a third, sometimes disputed subspecies of ruderalis. Hemp is not a unique cannabis species. Hemp is simply a varietal of cannabis sativa that grows with little to no THC content. This can be confusing, as there is a lot of misinformation about the difference between hemp and cannabis. But the easiest way to think about it is to draw a simple comparison. If we were to look at berries, we know that the proper species of berries are divided into things like raspberry, strawberry, gooseberry, or blueberry. We do not divide berries into species based upon whether they are sweet, sour, red, or blue. Trying to divide cannabis into hemp versus marijuana or medical cannabis is the same as trying to classify fruit based on taste or color. In fact, both medicinal and recreational cannabis and hemp are part of the same plant species, with the distinction between them based primarily on their cannabinoid content. That being said, for the purposes of clarity within this presentation, we will use the word cannabis when referring to cannabis being used for medical or recreational purposes, and we will use the word hemp when referring to cannabis with less than 0.3% THC composition. The federal guideline differentiating hemp from cannabis comes down to the percentage of THC found within the plant. Less than 0.3% THC is designated as hemp, whereas greater than 0.3% THC is designated as cannabis. This 0.3% designation stems from a 1976 taxonomic report by Canadian plant scientists Ernest Small and Arthur Cronquist. In their words, they said, quote, "It will be noted that we arbitrarily adopt a concentration of 0.3% delta-9 THC on a dry weight basis in young, vigorous leaves of relatively mature plants as a guide to discriminating two classes of plants. This is based on standard-grown material in Ottawa, in gardens, greenhouses, and growth chambers, and of course, on our analytical techniques." Unquote. Small and Cronquist never intended for 0.3% THC to become a legal distinction between hemp and other forms of cannabis. In fact, they said themselves that it was a completely arbitrary designation. That being said, several scientists have conducted chemical analysis of cannabis and determined that it is in fact a reasonable figure to discriminate between the two classes of plants. However, what is often overlooked is the very clear instruction that the 0.3% THC concentration is meant to apply to the young, vigorous leaves of relatively mature plants, and not to their flowering tops, where cannabinoids are most concentrated. This confusion over where and what to test has led to many different legal issues and scientific confusion as to how we can accurately identify which plants are hemp and which plants are not. Most hemp grows in a very different fashion from its cannabis counterparts. Hemp features skinny leaves that are concentrated toward the top of the plant and grows much taller and skinnier than most cannabis. Hemp is typically grown closely together in a large, outdoor, multi-acre plots. It can grow readily in a variety of climates, and its growth cycle is 100 to 120 days. Unlike hemp, cannabis typically features broad leaves, dense buds, and has a shorter, bushier appearance. Cannabis requires a carefully controlled warm and humid atmosphere for proper growth and cannot be grown too close to other plants. The taller, reedier stalks of hemp make it much more useful as a fiber as opposed to the shorter, bushier cannabis plants. It is also incredibly important to keep hemp and cannabis crops completely isolated from one another. They can cross-pollinate easily with little to no trouble, and the pollination of a cannabis crop by a hemp crop would cause a disastrous reconfirmation of the plant's cannabinoid content.